Hey, this is Kyle Crawford from Strong Dads. Strong Dads wants to thank Crimer Beer House for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. The beer house was started in 1982 by the Crimer family. Since that time, they have become a Cincinnati favorite. If you're looking for an incredible meal and an incredible setting, you have to try Crimer's Beer House down on Route 128 in Cleves, Ohio.
Hey, welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merle Hutchinson and the one and only amazing.
Oh my goodness, Kyle Crawford here today.
I know, I had to blow it up a little bit.
He's saying that so I don't razz him as hard. You know, if he builds me up, maybe I'll keep him at the same level.
Yeah, I'm still injured. I'm still dealing with this knee stuff. And, you know, last time you were just... You were abusive.
You look good today, Merle.
Oh, do I?
You look real good.
I got some sleep finally. Good deal. Hey, so welcome to Strong Dads here, and we are, you know, if you got a chance to listen to our last show, it was all about anger, slow to anger is what we call that, and anger outbursts, and just sometimes it gets the best of us, and we just talked real about that. But this show, in some ways, is very connected to that show, and so we just. It might be a good thing to listen to the first one just to go to this one, but obviously it's a standalone. You can definitely listen to just this one and get what our message is going to be today. But the whole idea here today is we're going to talk about scars.
Yeah.
I've got a really nice scar down my leg right now. It's nasty looking. But that's not the kind of scar we're going to talk about today. Okay, we're going to talk more about emotional scars, the mental scarring that takes place in our life. And, you know, if you have a scar, then there's the assumption that you had a wound.
Sure.
Okay, you took a hit, right? So we're going to talk about that today and what that looks like and what that means and how that really has an influence in our life. So how are you doing anyway? I'm going into show stuff already. You doing all right? You look
I'm doing
a little
great.
tired.
No, I'm great.
Did you work this week?
Yes.
Did you?
I did. Yes, I worked. Yes.
Good.
Yes, I have emotional scars from working.
From what you. Oh man, I'll tell you, you do some crazy, crazy stuff. That's there.
Good, yeah. But so I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. You know, I'm ready for the spring to hit here. I'm done with this cold weather.
I hear you, brother.
I'm done with it. We had that little span where it was like 40, 50, and 60 degrees, and then all of a sudden just the Arctic frost came in. It was bad.
Yeah.
It could always be worse, but it's
right.
We could be somewhere that's got 4 feet of snow right now, but it's it's good. I'm ready for the spring now. Ready for March Madness to hit.
Oh, you're itching, aren't you?
I'm itching. My favorite time of the year.
Yeah, I know you like that part. So that kind of helps get people through winter as they start to get closer to that tournament.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we need to thank our sponsors here. I want to thank Crimer's Beer House for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. The Beer House was started in 1982 by the Crimer family. Since that time, they have become a Cincinnati favorite. So if you're looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, you have to try Crimer's Beer House, located down on Route 128 in Cleves, Ohio.
Awesome. Yeah, and Strong Dads also wants to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency in Bright, Indiana, for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. Mansfield Insurance Agency was established in 1981 and have been dedicated to the individuals and the businesses in Bright, Indiana, and they serve all the clients throughout Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky.
All right, very good. So, you know, why this topic? Well, the whole idea of scars, like we said before, assumes that there was a wound that took place. And when we have a wound, like a physical wound, it needs care at some level, okay? Depending on the deepness, the largeness of it, it needs care. Maybe it's simple care, like it's just going to heal on its own. Or maybe it needs stitches. Right? Or maybe in the case of a broken bone or whatever, we have to go and get it even more in depth, okay? But from the wound, you will have a scar at some level, all right? The scar is not really what we're worried about. It's the healing of the scar. Like, how well did it heal?
Yeah.
Okay, that's really what we're going to talk about, more from the emotional side of things.
Right.
So your brain, when it has trauma, is head has a scar. It has a wound, right?
Right.
And there are proper ways for us as dads to handle that wound and then that healing. And then there's bad ways. Okay.
Sure.
And bad ways are like if I broke a leg and never had it casted, it would heal at some level.
Sure.
But I may walk with a limp,
Yeah.
a noticeable limp for the rest of my life, when if I would have just handled it properly, I could have walked completely normal.
Right.
Okay? So the same thing happens with these emotional scars.
Right.
And we're trying to avoid limping around in life,
right.
so to speak.
And I think it's good to note that sometimes with our scars, like I think we automatically go to the negative part that there's been an emotional scar that's happened, but sometimes our scars can actually help make us into who we are today. And just like you're saying, how we handle them, fast forward to however X amount of years, like sometimes those scars have completely transformed, completely changed the way we are as men today. So I think it's good to note that those scars, although at the time were hurtful and at the time brought us pain or emotional pain, like I think it's good to note that again, how we handle that, how we move about that, how we heal from that can really bring really, really good growth in your personal life and how you are as a man today. I think it's good to note that.
Right, for sure. I want to let's talk for just a second about as a dad. So we're talking from dad's reference points here.
Right.
Okay. So your dad, whether he knew it or not, probably wounded you at various times.
He did whoop my butt a couple times.
Whip your butt, and you more than deserved it. I guarantee that part. But the reverse side of that is you have wounded your kids.
Oh, yeah.
And will, you have young girls, and so the opportunity still continues to be there. And I know I've wounded my kids, and we're going to share a little bit on those lines. But how about, can you think of a time in your life where one of your parents or your dad, my guess is what I should go to, your dad wounded and scarred you?
Yeah, so I would say my story is kind of one of the big things that kind of sticks out is essentially a two-parter. And the first would be kind of that negative scar that we've been talking about. And then the second part of this story is going to be that kind of that growth part and where we're at today. So, I can remember growing up seeing my dad drink. And I don't want to sit here and say that my dad drank a lot, but I think that my dad drank as kind of an escape. That was his way to get away from life for a little bit. And I'd venture to say right now, if you ask my dad, he would probably say he was an alcoholic. And from that, and we actually talked about it in our last show, that quick to anger, that idea that it's hard being parents. It's hard to be a parent, and whether it was the alcohol or whether it was anger issues that my dad dealt with, my dad was very quick to anger, and it showed itself. It reared up, quite a bit growing up. Whether that was with my mom and my dad together, whether that was directed towards my siblings or I. And from that, my parents had multiple times where separation and possible divorce was going to happen, and kind of that going through that. Fast forward now, looking at it, that was definitely a scar that I have. Seeing my parents interact the way that they did, seeing my dad drink, but the cool part of all that is, we fast forward today. My dad no longer drinks and gave that up. And I talked to my mom about this. I wanted to get her permission to talk about, the stuff I just shared. And she said, she never really gave my dad the ultimatum, either quit drinking or, I'm done. And I think that says a lot about my dad, because my dad, I think, saw the writing on the wall without even being told. He owned his mistakes that he had. And my dad gave up drinking cold turkey. My dad gave up drinking and dipping actually at the exact same time.
Whoa!
Yeah, which is crazy. He put a rubber band on his wrist and he would snap himself every time he got those urges to do that. And I think it says a lot about the character of my dad that he knew he had to do that, or else he was going to lose everything.
Right.
Things just weren't going well. And for me and my siblings. We've gotten to see my parents fight for their marriage, which is a really cool thing. In order to get where they're at now, they had to go through those rocky times. So my parents seeked out professional help. They went to counseling, and they're still married today. and they have a marriage where, yes, marriage is hard, and they still have disagreements, but it's really cool to see my parents now interact with each other when those times do come, when my mom pushed my dad or my dad pushed my mom. It's cool to see how they interact now and how they resolve those issues. And in part, it's good for my dad to have gone through everything he went through, because now my dad is an incredible grandpa to my kids, to my siblings' kids. So it's really neat to see my dad interact with my kids, and he wouldn't be this way had he not gone through what he did, or had he continued that same path. He would be a completely different grandpa. And I've told my dad many a times just the value that he is to our family, and it's because he fought for his family. So yes, it started out as a scar that took a lot of healing, but now fast forward to where we are today is unbelievable to see my parents, see my dad the way he is.
Yeah.
So
Stronger than
my goodness.
Prior to the scar. So yeah, that's a great story about just what we're really getting into here today. That idea that just because there's a wound, we often see this, that a lot of times the healing is stronger than the previous. Yeah. And so in this case, because the healing was done right.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that. The healing was done the right way. We're stronger. Okay. Yep. Well, my story is probably a little different than that. Okay. So I'm thinking about stuff that stuck in my head for a long time.
Sure.
All right. That my dad did. And this is a story that, from a kid's point of view is probably a big deal. From an adult's point of view, it's like, come on, get over it. But that's not the point here. The point is, were you wounded? Okay. And my situation was, I had a great neighborhood group of buddies. Okay.
Yeah.
And we were out running around having fun. We were out in my front yard playing some football or whatever. And my younger brother was there. And for some reason, I thought it would be funny to start teeing up my younger brother, making fun of him, okay? And I start making fun of him in front of my buddies, and just teasing my brother about different stuff, private stuff, and stuff that nobody really needed to hear.
Right.
And I thought it was funny, and then my friends were laughing. And the more they laughed, the more I continued.
Oh, yeah. And
before you know it, my younger brother's crying, okay? And he goes running in the house. And he tells my dad. And so my dad comes out and he tells me to come over to him. And in front of all my buddies, my dad spanks me 3 or 4 really good times. Okay. Yeah. And then he makes me apologize to my brother in front of all my friends.
Wow.
Okay. And, I don't remember the spanking hurting that bad, but I remember the embarrassment and humiliation.
Sure.
Okay. And I remember thinking, just why did he do that to me?
Right.
Okay. And I was angry about that.
Sure.
Not dismissing my part in this.
Right.
Okay. I knew what I did was wrong, but man, I felt like he just roasted me in front of my friends. Okay.
Right.
And so that left a little bit of a wound. And, even as a kid, I knew that I did have to come clean on my part. And besides just apologizing to my brother out in front of people, I had to learn from it.
Sure.
I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah.
Okay. But that was one of those things, man. My dad did it, and he, it was a great opportunity for him to teach me, and he taught me strongly, okay?
Yeah.
Which left a scar, but not necessarily a bad scar.
Right, exactly.
Okay? So, yeah, those things happen, and it helps groom. I've not made fun of my brother since. That's not true. If he hears this, we'll go back and forth. But definitely always in a different way now.
Right. And I think it's important, we sit here and both talk about our dads and the quote-unquote scars that they created for us. And I think it's really important to note that now as dads, I'm sure if we, fast forward to 10 years, I'm sure my 2 girls will have all kinds of stories about scars that I've created. Yeah. And I'm sure your kids would be able to say the same thing. And I think it's important to note that being a dad is hard.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do stuff perfect, and we're going to create those scars in our own kids' lives. It happens. And again, it's just that we have to learn from it. And just like we've been talking about how we've kind of learned from the scars that our dads have created in us. And I I think it's important that we get an opportunity to walk alongside our kids and help them heal and help them kind of, take the scars that we've created and hopefully shine a positive light on it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. Okay. So we're going to really move this in from not the wound, but now how do we heal the wound? Okay. And I really feel like we should break this up into two sections, because one of them is how do you heal the past wounds that you maybe have experienced. Sure. Okay. And then I think we probably need to talk about, okay, well, what about the ones we're doing to our kids?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's really one, you're the receiver, the other, you're the giver. you gave the wound. All right. Yep. So I think we probably need to approach it in two ways. So let's talk about your past scars. So here you are, a strong dad right now, whatever, you're 30, you're 40 years old, whatever, and you're doing life. But you have something back there, a scar that is created a limiting factor or a shaping of who you are that isn't necessarily good. Okay. Yeah. So let's deal with that a little bit.
For sure, yeah. So I think with our past scars, we need to just like you and I both just did. We need to recognize them. We need to talk about them, bring them up to the surface, and the idea that when you begin to talk about stuff, that's that whole healing process. Going through the healing process, if we never talk about them, we continue to tuck them deep down inside, and calluses grow over top of those scars, and then other scars grow on top of those. So I think it's really important to recognize those previous scars, bring them to surface. And then, we can, because once you make light of something and once you bring it to light, you can begin to deal with it and begin to kind of have that healing process. I think those scars are going to happen, and it's okay that they did happen, but how we go about them and how we kind of begin that healing process, we have to address them. In order for there to be healing, you have to talk about it.
Right. And so I think there's a caution here in that you don't go back and reassess every single scar you've ever had, every single wound. I mean, if it isn't bothering you, okay, like my story that I shared, it's healed. It's healed well. I've learned from it. It was good. There's no hard feeling from it or all, whatever, And so that's not one I want to reopen.
Sure.
Okay. I think so. Then the next level is saying, okay, which one of my scars seems to be more at a festering in its healing process.
Right.
Like it taints me still.
Sure.
All right. It damages me. So the next part then is saying, okay, so I've looked at all my different scars now. Which ones have not quite healed properly? Okay.
Right.
And at that point, I think it's time to wrap your head around, well, how are you going to deal with this?
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you haven't dealt with it properly, it's shaping you. It's creating anxieties, a prejudice, a hate, something in your heart that's not right.
Yeah, and I think with that, the person who created that scar, they may never have known that they did that, that they created that scar. So I've had the opportunity to go back to people who have created scars in my life and address that with them and let them know that I've moved past that and I've healed from those scars. And sometimes they don't even know that they're the ones that created that scars. So I think it's beneficial as a man to get that growth so you don't have that prejudice, that judgment, that anxiety towards what happened. To, again, going back to the first start, recognize it and talk about it and talk to the person who created that scar, because if they don't ever know it, then how can they ever move past it? How can they ever get to the point where they feel forgiven for what they've done, regardless if they know the benefit or the significant value in it? I think there's a lot of value in just going and talking to that person and letting them know, hey, this happened, this is how I felt from it. And as a man, that's hard to talk about your emotions sometimes, but I think there's a lot of value going back, talking to that person, hey, this happened. I've forgiven you for what that conversation, that scar that you've created, and this is where I'm at today because of that scar that you've created. Mm-hmm. But it's okay. Like we're here today because of some of those things that happen.
Yeah, we're going to move forward, and so I also recommend that some of these things we maybe can't wrap our head around because it's been a pretty deep wound.
Sure.
Maybe this is the time that you seek some help.
Yeah.
You talk to a close friend, or you go to a counselor or a coach. That's what we're here for at Rock Solid Families. Everybody that comes in here has got a wound. That's why we're here. Okay.
Yeah.
So folks come in and we go, okay, so what's the wound? and let's see how we can start doing a better first aid.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, each person's different, and yours deserves a different type of attention than anybody else's, and so getting some outside help is a great thing to do, kind of as you talked about before.
Yep.
Okay. The next part of this really is looking at the factors that are involved in that scar. Okay, so like how's it changed your life?
Yeah.
If you had a scar and it altered your life, look specifically at how it's altered you.
Yeah.
I can't hold a job. I seem to be like quick to anger, and I get fired all the time.
Yeah.
I can't stay in a relationship. I've been with multiple people, or I've been divorced multiple times. I tend to get to the bar way too often. Okay,
Yeah.
so you really identify like, okay, what has been the result of this scar?
Yeah.
And this is that time then where not only have you dealt with the scar in terms of dealing with the person that did it or whatever, but now you start to deal with, okay, what does your limp look like?
Sure.
Are you using alcohol? Are you abusing people? Are you there's some factor there that is now part of your life that you identify with.
Right.
Okay.
And and I don't know the actual number as far as statistics, but if your parents got a divorce, the chance of you getting divorced is significantly higher, and your parents getting divorced is a scar. Mm-hmm. And if we don't address it, and if you don't go through the healing process of that, you can just perpetuate the cycle. And then when that scar is hit home and it's really hurt, and you've never gone through the healing process, it's hard because that's what you've known. You've never addressed it. So I think there's if you do come from a divorce home, which happens a lot,
sure,
you do not want to be you don't want to create that scar for your own kids. So I think there's a lot of value in addressing those issues, addressing those scars, just like we were talking about, seeking out that professional help. But again, in order to get to that, you have to realize what that scar did to you and how it impacted your life.
Yeah. So bottom line here is you've identified the scar. You do what it takes now to heal it properly. Okay, because it's time to move on and move on in a healthy way. Okay, let's go to the other side of this. All right, so this about we just talked about like if we were scarred,
right?
But what about the scarring that we're doing? Okay, and in particular here, we're really talking about scars that we create, like especially with our kids. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know because I think about this all the time. Like, man, what have I said that my kids are? It's just like my memory has an etching of when my dad humiliated me in front of my friends.
Yeah.
How many of those things do I have in my kids' life that I don't even know I did, or I knew at the moment, but I've just kind of pushed it aside like, well, no big deal, okay? And so how do we help our kids with the healing that we may have done, or with the scarring that we may have done to them is kind of the next part of this.
Yeah,
right?
and this kind of really plays into our last episode that we did about the anger part. Those scars that we create for our kids sometimes came out of anger. I shared a story about when I spanked Ava, and she moved a little bit quicker.
You're a jerk.
She moved kind of quick, and I ended up smacking the back of her leg. And although that physical scar, that physical, I don't want to say abuse. That sounds really bad.
Because it wasn't even a scar.
Yeah, it wasn't a scar, but it healed. But maybe there's an emotional scar that I've created with her, and I think it's important that we need to seriously start to assess and reflect on those scars that we do create and can create for our kids. Last episode we talked about those triggers and how, truly, sometimes if your kids have a trigger and they bring you to anger, you can say really, really hurtful things that can cause deep, deep emotional scars in your kids. I know there's many cases like kids will say that my dad said that I would never amount to anything, and how those words can really stay with a person, and then that person doesn't end up amounting to anything because they took that and they took that as a truth because their dad,
right.
We've talked about we've talked about that, how that's us, like we can be heroes to our kids. So I think it's really important to seriously assess and reflect on what you say and how you act to your kids, and begin to talk and ask you. It's a great opportunity to ask your kids, like, how have I hurt you in the past? And again, just moving to that healing process. So I think it's important to always go back to that idea that we've assessed, we've established that we've created scars. We need to continue to go back, and that healing process has to start. Just like we did with scars that have been created against us, we have to do the same thing with our kids if we've created those scars.
Yeah, and I think so some of those, if you're perceptive about you hurting your kids, again, not physically, but if you're perceptive of it, you seize the moment. Okay, so I just said something nasty or harsh or wrong to one of my kids, and I watch their face just melt. Okay, when I see the emotion has calmed down, it is my responsibility to own what I just did. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, they may not forgive me, because depending on where they are and
Sure.
how deep the wound, they may be so angry or hurt that they can't forgive. But me at that time saying, hey, man, you know what I said was wrong. I apologize for that, and I'm not going to do that again. Okay.
Right.
And so at that point, it allows them to say, okay, this guy is on my side. He wants to
Right.
help me. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's stuff that we see in the moment. A little bit tougher, and this is what I was alluding to before, is that idea that, man, there's scars that I put on my kids that I don't even know about.
Yep.
And it could have been 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think then it's important that you have that conversation. And with my older boys, I do find myself occasionally when we get together, I'm like, okay, so tell me have I ever said something that just really, and both of them have said, yeah, you remember when you said this? I was like, oh man, but again, we've worked through the healing process
Sure.
on some of that. And again, now we can laugh about it.
Right.
But there was a tension in it earlier.
Right. And I think it's important to note that in that healing process, you can't minimize their feelings. Like if your kids say, if you talk to your two older kids and your boys and say, hey, what did I say that hurt or offended or kind of created those scars? If they bring up a thing, you can't say, well, come on, that wasn't that big of a deal.
No, you added to the scar.
Exactly. Yeah. Because then, just like you're saying, in their mind, they're like, that scar just got a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
We have to realize that our words that we say and our actions do hurt people and can hurt people, and we can't minimize them. Again, we have to own, okay, if you took it this way, I'm so sorry that you took it that way. Like that sucks. I'm sorry that I hurt you in that way, but by saying, come on. I
know I said that, but you just really need to handle it.
Yeah,
better,
you need to man up a little bit,
Yeah.
But it's important to know that if your kids do address a scar that they have that you've created in them, we can't minimize what their feelings are towards it.
Great point. I think the other thing too is once you've done your part as a father to own it, to apologize for it, and to try to help your kid through it, you got to stop beating yourself up over it.
Yeah.
So, for the idea that you'd walk around forever like, I'm a terrible dad, I can't believe what I did. You don't help your fathering at
Right.
that point. And that's also helps to encourage your kids to say, okay, we need to move on.
Right.
All right. I mean, we all get wounded.
Yep.
And we all heal, but we do need to move on. And so even for yourself, once you've done the proper work, you need to move on, and you need to help the people that were involved to help move on and move past the best way that we can.
Absolutely. And you have to realize that when you apologize and ask for forgiveness with that scar you created, if you get that forgiveness or your kids take time to kind of go through the healing process, if you then continue to revert back to that same thing you just did to them, like that healing process is never going to fully happen. So we need to mean what we say and say what we mean.
Right.
So when you apologize for a scar that you've created with your kids, you can't continue to go back to it.
Yeah.
And it's not going to ever be beneficial. There's not going to be complete healing with that scar. If you apologize, your kids take a little bit of time to go through the healing process, and then you create the exact same scar just in a different place.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to be beneficial. And this is something that I struggle with, because every third day I get off work and I come home and and then I'm quick to anger. And Ava won't put her jacket on, and I'm like, put your jacket on, and I get real short with her. And then 3 days later, after I've apologized to her, I do the exact same thing again. And this is one of those things, just recognizing those triggers, because if that trigger is something that sets you off and kind of leads you to create that scar for your kids, knowing that trigger happens, and that's where we've talked about having that time out, that time to step away, because if you don't have that ability to step away from the situation, you can continue to create that vicious cycle where that scar continues to grow over and over and over again.
Yeah, and at that point, your kid doesn't trust you.
Yeah.
Your words are empty. Yeah, you apologize, but an apology without repentance is empty. Right, and the same thing with God, right? I mean, he's like, yeah, right, you continue to do the same sin, so your words are cheap. So we do have to start to honor our words with our action. So I think there's a big part in this, too, that the last part of this is just that idea that all of us heal in our own time frame, under our own conditions, but we do have to be responsible for doing the work to help the healing, okay? And so we want to encourage ourselves to do that. We want to encourage our kids in the case of if we've scarred them. The big part of this, too, is, you got to have God involved. You got to ask God for forgiveness. You got to be in relationship with God. If God knows your heart, all right, if God knows, man, I want to be the best dad that I can be, but I just keep falling short. He knows that. God is not going to condemn you. All right. He wants your heart, and that's where he balances that grace and justice, as we talked about before in our last show. And so bring God into the picture. And let your kids know that you're bringing God into the picture. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's important. If you've never invited God into your house, I did this when we first moved into our new house, and it sounds kind of, I don't know, corny to say, but I opened up the door of our front door, and I just prayed, like, at our front door, like, come into this house, like, I want you here, like, because stuff's going to go on in this house that is not going to always be pretty, not always going to be, stuff that you want other people to see. But man, if you have God involved, if you have that forgiveness, if you have that foundation, we've talked about many a times in this podcast, if you have that foundation of Christ in your life and in your family, man, because you get to show your kids what forgiveness looks like in a way that you can't show that example to your kids.
Right, yeah, you can never attain that level.
You're never going to be able to. So I think it's beneficial. If you've never done it, invite God into your house. Like, invite him into everything you've got going on. Because, I mean, I have to believe that there's some people that are listening to this that maybe aren't fully on board with the whole God thing. Try it out. See what happens. I can promise you, if you invite God into your life, you'll see a transformation that you've never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're living proof of that. So, all right, so we're going to wrap things up. So, a little bit of your homework. Remember, we all carry excess baggage from our past, right? And so, your kids, right now, you're creating some of their baggage, right? And so to assess, like, okay, what is my baggage? What are my scars? What is holding me back? And to go through the process of healing. And as we talked about through these different steps, start doing the work so that you can heal properly. And start looking at your kids as, okay, how can I help be their paramedic? Even though I may have delivered the wound, what can I do to help them out? So. Good stuff. Man, we kind of got serious in
this. We did. We got real serious.
Man, we need to, chill a little bit. I don't even like looking at you when you're all that serious. Like, man, he really, cares what he's talking about here. This is crazy. Good stuff. All right. Well, we do want to thank our strong dads out there for listening. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, please reach out to us here at Rock Solid Families, where we do marriage and family coaching along with fitness training. We are not perfect people, but we love to work with people and try to show them the perfection of God. So come on out and see us. You can reach me at hutch@rocksolidfamilies.org or give me a call at 812-576-7625. So Kyle, you better thank our sponsors one more time.
We better do that. Thanks so much for Kramer's Beer House and Mansfield Insurance Agency. Thanks so much for coming alongside of us. We really appreciate what you guys do for us. And thanks to all the listeners. We got, 25 episodes, 26 episodes.
This should be our 26.
All right, yeah. So if you have any questions about what we talk about, I'm sure we've referenced multiple times other shows. Go out there, listen to other shows, see what we got going on. We got a lot of cool guests we already have.
We've got some good guests coming up. We got some good guests
coming up. Yep. So, excited. So, thanks so much just for the opportunity to talk with you guys. So, go out there and be some strong dads.
Hey, this is Merle Hutchinson from Strong Dads. Strong Dads wants to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency in Bright, Indiana for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. Established in 1981, the Mansfield Insurance Agency has been dedicated to the individuals and businesses in Bright, Indiana, serving clients throughout Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky.